Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me bring greetings from Mr. Philip, where my sister, Mr. Devin, and I journey to be part of this event. I must tell you that there wasn't a signal sent to me before you arrived that I would have to address the group. But of course, persons like myself, I must say that I am happy that I've gotten the opportunity, as it makes the drive from St. Philip to St. Lucie even more worthwhile. Let me start by joining George and acknowledging that this election of officers this afternoon was indeed the shortest such activity that I have ever witnessed. Without being around many such activity in the Barbados Labour Party for many years that I've been involved. So up front, it tells me that the persons who are members of this branch, they have an extremely vested interest in looking after the business of the branch, and through the business of the branch to contribute to the business of the Barbados Labour Party, and by further extension to the business of this country. Let me congratulate all such persons who have been elected to the various positions on the executive, and let me join George in reminding them of the enormity of the task, especially the National Council Rep, David, given the perilous state of affairs that this country has indeed found itself. So I wish you well, and I want to urge active participation in the business of the Barbados Labour Party. George has asked me to give reflections on matters of state, the matters of concern in Barbados at this time. As Mr. Denman, my sister and I were approaching this building, and somewhere in the neighborhood of Minor Ward, we reflected on some of the things that were indeed happening to Barbadians in the very low level at which this country has indeed reached. And he remarked that if anyone had told him 10, 15 years ago that in the year 2013, in this very year of corona, that Barbados and Barbadians would have reached this stage, that back then he would have waged a bet that it could never happen. And I told him that I indeed would have followed that same path, because 10, 15 years ago, the Barbados Labour Party was in charge, and it was only onward and upward. And all persons in Barbados, whether they supported the Barbados Labour Party or not, during those 14 years, were indeed reaping the benefits of a group of people going to work day in, day out, staff and his gallery ministers, inspiring our officers to give of their very best, and shaping a national economic framework which had at the center of the private sector involvement, and allowing the private sector to take us in their confidence, and we took them in our confidence, to ensure that economic activity in the private sector proceeded at a fairly rapid pace. And there was a high degree of dynamic consistency with regard to economic policy making in those days. So there was a high measure of certainty with regard to the formulation of execution of economic policy in those days. So the private sector knew exactly what to expect from Mr. Arthur and his team of policymakers. But ladies and gentlemen, one of the activities that I'm involved in at the University of the West Indies, I teach a course called Public Policy Analysis. And previously, it carried the title of the Economic Analysis for Public Policy. And one of the things that we pay particular attention to in that course is the interaction between politics and economics. We spend long hours trying to instill in students that there's a lot to be gained by aiming to understand this interaction between politics and economics. And one of the central themes in trying to understand that interaction between economics and politics, and we also teach a fair amount about public choice theory. And those two topics, amongst others in the course, allows us to understand, and the students therein, to understand the various actors that come into interaction, which result ultimately in influences on public expenditure, decision, and failure. It also allows us to come in direct contact with the literature that tells us about the motivation of every agent in that process of interaction that ultimately leads to public expenditure decision making. And I've lived to see, notwithstanding all the warnings that persons like myself and Mr. Arthur and Clyde and Ms. Motley and all the others in the last election, I've lived to see that when you build a platform on lies and indecency, it will come back to haunt you. But if it came back to haunt those perpetrators of these nasty acts, and if it came back to haunt them only, we can say all is well and all is fine. But I tell you, that when you prepare yourself to come to the public and participation in a general election, and you build a platform on a solid crop of lies and innuendos, and you know the Democratic Labour Party, that acronym, BLP, it stands for deceit, lies, and propaganda. And even though election is out of the way in February, as Kirsten reminded us, and even though some of us have continued on a path that they can uplift themselves and accelerate their participation in academic development and helping students to push back the frontier of knowledge, it hurts, and it hurts in a major, major way to see that everything that the Barbados Labour Party, when it said on the platform for those 3 weeks, we crisscrossing the country, and some of us building up a fair amount of stress because we had our jobs to look after during the day, and we tried our utmost to warn and to prepare the minds of voters that those wicked, deceitful criminals on the other side, that their motivation was indeed built on just winning an election. And the Barbadians were warned, and they were warned, and they were warned. And it pains me, even though my family and I cannot be considered amongst the less fortunate, it pains me to see where this country has come to. And as I travel in this region, I know, because as a university member, we get to travel and we get to engage in serious discussions on regional development in its fullest dimensions. And I can tell you, where and how people held up Barbados 5-6 years ago, it is no longer. So I come to terms with having to accept how persons feel of this country that we love so dear. And I will tell you a few of those nasty, vicious lies. And I pray to the Almighty that they will be given in the fullness or the shortness of time the just reward of deceiving a sufficiently slender majority of the Barbadian voters to be returned to power. And ladies and gentlemen, we warned them and we warned Barbadians and we warned Barbadians. And I remember it good, you know. And there are two things amongst many, many, many of the nasty lies that they told Barbadians. And they will pay for it. They will pay for it. Some of them will pay for it with ill health, and I am not afraid to say it, because as I said earlier, and back then in all the campaigns I participated in, if it comes to politics and your hands are not clean and your heart isn't pure, you will be dealt with. You may get short-term gains as they are getting now. But somewhere along the line, they will have to pay for it. They will pay for it by ill health, or they will pay for it by having scorn reap on them and their reputations, and rightfully so. And this message will go out because those wicked, nasty, deceitful criminals, night after night, in furtherance of billboards that were painted, they said that a vote for the Barbados Labour Party, or for the Democratic Labour Party, was a vote to protect public sector jobs. Remember that? And I warned them, and I warned them, and I warned them. And that particular a nasty radius, he got before the last election and engineered a colossal lie on Mr. Parker. Type Maskell, former Prime Minister, one after, and myself. And he went at the branch meeting and it get a lot of recognition by airplay and recognition in the press. And the four of us to meet at the University of the West Indies. And we are planning the demise of 10,000 public sector workers in the event that the Barbados Labour Party was returned to power. We place that case in the hands of a lawyer. And there are many reasons that I really wanted the Democratic Labour Party to lose. Not just because of incompetence. Not just because Barbadians of all walks of life needed an opportunity to feel good about their country again. Not just because the 16,000 people that had been sent home from the private sector between 2008 and early 2013, for them to feel once again that this country has some worth for them. And that they could once again get the opportunity to make some contribution to their families' advancement, but collectively to participate in national reconstruction. But I wanted us to win badly. Also, so that all the wrongdoings that they engaged in between 2008 and 2013, that we were on the verge of exposing, from the Clico mess with the Thompson family and their involvement, all the other spontaneous wickedness and deceit that they engaged in, that we were going to expose. I wanted us to win the election so as to get the opportunity to expose all of it, and whoever could have been found liable for anything that is in the eyes of the law is wrong. That they be held before the correct institutions and dealt with in the harshest possible way. And I've lived to see that nasty lie that we were planning to send more than 10,000 persons. I never met Mr. Arthur once in my office at the University of West Indies in that period. I see Clyde, but Clyde is a part-time lecturer. I never saw Mr. Barker once at the university in that period identified. And those billboards, and they were on record when they were canvassing in the period election, that a vote for the Democratic Labour Party is a vote to secure public sector jobs. And I'm telling you, I'm not a public sector worker who is being disenfranchised and who is being lied to. I know that they have deliberately and wickedly used those people. They have turned and they begin to turn, and it will end up being thousands on the red line for those people to suffer. Innocent people who were led down the garden path, the wrong path, by those malicious, wicked, and nasty people whose motivation was driven on by just return to office and power. I also lived to see and to hear. You know, during the last election campaign, I made some very truthful statements because I normally do. And I said that Fernell Stewart was to be, from an intellectual viewpoint and an understanding of the issues of the day that meant most of people's lives, that he was the less informed of all the members of the Democratic Labour Party. And I said he was a slow thinker. I said he was a slow learner. And I said he had to be a slow talker. Because he was possessed of not even the modicum of understanding of the issues affecting the people's lives during that period, and he has gotten worse. And an understanding and a minimum understanding of development in even a few of its dimensions escapes his understanding. And that man, who is totally unfit for office, gave every member of the University of the West Indies, lecturer, principal, student, the impression that that institution, that Barra and all of the others held up so dearly as a pillar on which this country's economic and social development was built. He said it would be a retrograde step, but the Democratic Labour Party to interfere with the flow of money to the University of the West Indies, not in those days. But the impression given was that it would be a retrograde step to deny the University of the West Indies the money to legitimately undertake the operations on behalf of national development. I've lived to see. And once again, I warn the students on political platforms and not at the institution, as the candidates of parties in up there. But they were warned, not just by me, but by people who are serious and who take the import of national development seriously, and the contribution that the University of the West Indies, as a regional institution and as a pillar of the educational system in Barbados, that institution could continue to make to our national development. And ladies and gentlemen, this wicked, deceitful, nasty, incompetent government, and all of these things can be played, because I fear none of them, and as I say, in the fullness of time, scorn is going to be heaped on all of them by rethinking people in this country. Because they're set up maliciously the last election to receive, and they succeeded. And it is come back to haunt them. And if persons could only turn back the hands of time, all those persons will be sent home from the civil service so far. All those people who will be sent home from the private sector since the election, if they could turn the hands of time back. And all the others who are barely holding on to a job, but whose circumstances have deteriorated, in some cases immeasurably, they would indeed give indifferently so. But you know that this government, in less than 5 years, I have never heard that institution that I've given so much to, and that has given so much to myself, and almost all of them in the cabinet, but not cabinet because maybe the university is in the place. But many of the others have gone through that place, including Stuart. And the only money that they had to pay was the caution fee. And a few dollars. Because they might think they had to pay that too. And I have lived to see that a group of people before the election who sought to give the impression that the university was so dear and its activities so pivotal to our development, could in less than 5 years owe the university $200 million. That is an average of $40 million a year. And before we debated office, I was the Minister of Education for 2 years. And one of the things I can tell you that Mr. Arthur remained steadfast, amongst many other things, was the vision of Urbar and the architects of our national development at that day. In pressing on, and it was notwithstanding other areas that had to go without funds. The University of the West Indies will never ever be denied a single cent to deal with its activities. And as the Minister of Education at the time, I participated at the highest body of the University Council, in helping to shape the strategic plan for the university covering the period 2012 and 2017. And those plans were lofty. And we had also agreed to a policy of the day that for this country's future and the gains that we had made economically, socially, culturally, and politically, that they will never be jeopardized because it was the most noble objective that we will have one graduate per household by 2020 or so. And that required the government of Barbados to give commitments even beyond larger sums of money, so that practical effect can be given to the timetable of the strategic plan for the university. And we gave them the line. We provided guarantees to back loans for the university, so that the university could build out its plan, so as to accommodate a wider range of programs, and so as to accommodate some new staff members, so that we could indeed offer those new programs. And these wicked, ridiculous, and incompetent, if I could use some other words, trust me, but the most incompetent bunch, are still in shock as to how Barbadians could actually vote back in a set of ridiculous and incompetent people. But they have owed the university $40 million a year on average for 5 years. But let me tell you something. George, give us the movement. Join movement. Now, this business of asking the students to pay 20% of the cost to keep them there from 2014. Let me tell you something. The amount of money that they're looking to shift from that ill-conceived and ill-thought-out measure is $42 million. And at the level of sheer numbers alone, they have been owing the university $40 million a year. So you understand the point I'm trying to make? That they cannot make any arrangement to liquidate a debt of $200,000 to the university as a whole, almost $150 million to this campus. And they are so full of shame. Because if they did not do that, you know they would continue to owe the university at a rate of $42 million going forward. So instead of racking up more debt to the university, they have shifted that component of their financial obligation onto the students. Could you imagine that? A set of wicked, ridiculous, nasty, and everything that they do you really understand the tremendous impact that is going to have on the poor hearts of this Barbadian society? I mean, think about it carefully. By now, since 2008, almost 20,000 people get sent home in this country from the private sector. And every budgetary proposal, but you know, the worst thing that you can do is allow a fool to be involved in serious business. And I don't make that statement like you. Because what the Minister of Finance is expected to do as part of